Today's story is one that will leave you speechless. It's about a simple maid, a language she quietly mastered, and a millionaire who learned that true intelligence and humility don't wear expensive suits. The marble floor of the Pentwell mansion gleamed like a mirror that morning. Sunlight spilled through the tall glass windows, catching on crystal chandeliers and gold-trimmed furniture. Everything in the house screamed money. Everything except for the young woman quietly sweeping the hallway. Her name was Maria Alvarez. 24 years old, soft-spoken, always punctual, and never without her notebook tucked in her apron pocket. She'd been working for the wealthy Mr. Richard Hale for nearly 2 years, polishing his floors, serving his coffee, and sometimes, when she thought no one noticed, pausing by his library door just to listen to the soft hum of classical music and the faint sound of foreign words from his business calls. Richard Hale was not a cruel man, just detached. He'd earned his millions through international trade, spending half his life in boardrooms and the other half looking down on people who hadn't. To him, his staff were background noise. But that morning, that would change. Maria was dusting the edge of the grand piano when Richard's frustrated voice echoed from his office. "I said I need the exact translation, not some robotic nonsense." He stormed out, holding a few papers written in Spanish, letters from a South American partner. His translator hadn't shown up, and he needed to understand the contract before noon. Maria froze when his eyes fell on her. "You," he barked. "Do you understand any of this?" Her hands tightened on the duster. "A little, sir," she said softly. Richard smirked. "A little? All right then, let's test that." He walked over, dropped the papers onto the marble floor, and crossed his arms. "Translate this," he said mockingly. "And my salary is yours for the day." The guards chuckled. The secretary hiding behind the door giggled nervously. Everyone knew Richard Hale earned nearly $30,000 a day. To them, the challenge was ridiculous, almost cruel. But Maria didn't flinch. She bent down, picked up the papers carefully, and began reading. Her eyes moved smoothly, lips whispering softly in Spanish before switching flawlessly into English. Her voice was calm, gentle, but every word hit like thunder. "This letter," she began, "is from Señor Castillo. He says the cargo was delayed due to a flood near the Panama port. He's apologizing, not refusing. He also says the insurance claim will cover the loss in full if you send the confirmation by Friday." Richard's face froze. She continued translating, paragraph after paragraph, perfectly capturing the tone, the nuance, even the emotion behind the sentences. By the time she finished, the room was silent. The only sound was the clock ticking above the fireplace. Richard stammered. That was accurate. He grabbed the papers, read them again, then looked at her with something he hadn't shown anyone in years: respect. "Where did you learn Spanish?" he asked. Maria smiled faintly. "From your library, sir. I used to dust the books and read the ones you said no one cared about." That night, after everyone had left, Richard sat alone in his study, replaying the moment. A maid, a quiet, overlooked girl, had done what his expensive translator couldn't. He poured himself a drink and thought about what she'd said. "From your library? The ones you said no one cared about." It hit him harder than he expected. For years, he'd surrounded himself with people who agreed with him, who told him what he wanted to hear. But Maria, she hadn't spoken to impress. She'd spoken the truth. The next morning, Maria came to work as usual. She didn't expect anything to change. But when she arrived, a neatly folded envelope was waiting for her on the counter. Inside was a handwritten note and a check for $30,000. "You earned it," the note said, "but I'd rather give you something better. Meet me in the study." Her heart raced as she knocked softly on the study door. Richard was there, standing beside a leather-bound folder. "Sit down, Maria," he said kindly. "I've been thinking about yesterday." She hesitated. "Sir, I didn't mean to offend you." "Offend me?" he interrupted. "You taught me something I'd forgotten. You reminded me that knowledge and worth aren't measured by titles or suits." He opened the folder and slid it across the desk. "This is a scholarship form," he said, "for the International Institute of Translation in Madrid. I already made the first payment. If you want it, the opportunity is yours." Maria's breath caught in her throat. "Sir, I can't accept that." "It's too much." Richard shook his head. "You earned it the moment you picked up that paper. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Months passed. The mansion felt emptier without Maria's quiet presence. But Richard received updates through letters, each one more confident, more eloquent than the last. She wrote about her classes, her teachers, and how she'd been offered part-time work as a translator for international NGOs. In one letter, she wrote, "You once said your business speaks many languages but understands none. I hope one day to change that, not just for companies, but for people who never get the chance to be heard." Richard read that line over and over. For the first time in years, he felt proud, not of a deal or a number, but of someone else's growth. A year later, Maria returned. Not as a maid, but as a guest speaker at a corporate seminar Richard hosted. The audience was filled with executives, investors, and journalists. Richard stood by the stage as Maria walked in, wearing a simple blue dress and holding her notes with trembling hands. But when she began to speak, her voice carried strength that silenced the entire hall. "I once worked as a maid in this very building," she began. "Every day I cleaned rooms full of words I couldn't yet understand. But I believed one thing, that education is not a privilege. It's a bridge. The moment someone believes in you, that bridge becomes real." Her eyes met Richard's across the room. He smiled, not the proud, arrogant smile of a millionaire, but the gentle smile of a man who'd finally learned humility. When she finished, the crowd rose to their feet. Reporters swarmed her, cameras flashed, and amidst all the applause, Maria turned to the man who had once mocked her and whispered with a tearful smile, "Thank you for daring me to translate that day." Richard chuckled softly. "No, Maria, thank you for translating my life." That night, after the event, Richard stood by the window of his penthouse, watching the city lights flicker. His reflection stared back, older, quieter, wiser. He realized that his greatest investment hadn't been in stocks, properties, or companies. It had been in a single act of kindness and in believing in someone when it was least expected. So, what's the lesson here? Sometimes the people we overlook are the ones holding the keys to wisdom. Sometimes the quietest voices are the ones that can change our hearts the most. Maria didn't just translate a letter, she translated arrogance into humility, wealth into compassion, and silence into purpose. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Kindness Stories. Because here, we don't just tell tales, we remind the world that kindness still exists. And sometimes, one act of belief can change a life forever.